Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for being here. And today I'm super excited because I am talking with Angela Comfort. Hello, Angela.
Hello.
Good to have you here. Thank you for being on my channel with me and for talking with me today. Angela has some really amazing experiences to share with Jesus, who we also know as
Yes.
Yeshua, and
Yes.
pre-birth
hmm
experiences. She's told me a little bit about her story and I can't wait to hear more. So, Angela, I'm going to put you in the spotlight now. And if
Okay,
you
thank
don't,
you.
yeah, of course, if you don't mind sharing maybe just a little bit about your background and just a little bit about how you came to remember have this
Sure.
experience that you want that you're going to share. Um, okay,
Sure. Thank you for having me. And
of course.
um, I do remember I was going through a lot in my 20s, and little tidbits of the memory were starting to come back. When I was a child, the first time I remembered it, my mother was singing "Jesus Loves Me," and I was like, "Wait a minute, I remember Jesus." And so it was like I was brought back to the moment. But of course, life goes on. I forgot. And then I think I was about 3 or 4 years old. I was in my grandparents' basement and there was a sermon going, and a man was speaking about God. And I was like, wait a minute. If if they have the Bible and they know about God already, why am I here? It was like I remembered that I had to come here to talk about Jesus. But then
Mm,
once again, I'm a kid and I forget. But as I was an adult, that's when the memory really started flooding back. Like, you're here for a reason and you need to complete the mission. Um, so as I was a 20-year-old, that's when everything really flooded back to me. And I still wasn't making sense of my life at the time. But I think as I explain what happened to me, it'll kind of come forward. Um, so the beginning is actually from my last life.
mm,
Um, I was a woman and I was married to my husband, and he was cheating on me. And I found out about it, and I was very upset. I told him he needs to stop seeing that woman. We need to make our marriage work. And he just wasn't sure about it, and he didn't really want to give up that relationship. And I was very angry, very betrayed, upset, all of it. And I remember driving and seeing palm trees, and I got into a car wreck. And uh, the next thing I remember, I was on the other side, and it was an area with clouds. And I saw two light beings approach me, and they seemed to remember me, and they were like, "How are you? How are you doing?" And I'm like, "I recognize you, but I don't recognize you." And I'm having these thoughts in my head, thinking no one can hear me. And they suddenly have their 1800s attire on. The woman had a black dress and the man had a top hat, and she had a big hat too. And that's when I suddenly was like, oh my gosh, I remember you. I really don't know how I knew them at that time, but I did when I was up there.
mhm.
And I was like, you guys have to tell me, how do I get back to Earth? I need to go. I have a husband, I need to go back. I know I can go back. And they're like, you just go to the guide over there. And I was like, thank you. And I rushed over to the guide and I said, I need to go back to my body. And he had a clipboard and he was looking at it and he said, you're from Earth, right? And I was like, what? What do you mean from Earth? And I just didn't say anything because I didn't want to know about it. I didn't want to ask. I just wanted to go back to my body. And so I was like, yeah. And then he's like, I'm sorry, that life is over with. And I was like, no, 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 no. Like, I started to panic. I wanted to go back to that husband. I wanted to make that marriage work. I wasn't done. And then a couple other guides approached me. They were telling me to calm down. I said, I'm not calming down. You guys can send me back. I know you can. I was just so upset. And then they looked at each other and said, we need to get him. And I was like, get who? And then right behind him, to my direction, I could see right behind him something opened up out of nowhere and a light orb just came through it and it closed up behind. And what was in there were, it was like a stadium full of light. And I knew I couldn't go in there. I just knew it was a holy place and I was not able to go. And the light orb approached me and formed into a man. And I was like, ooh, this person has power. Whatever they say goes. Like, if they tell me I can go back, I can go back. But if I have to stay, I'll stay. And it was Jesus, but I didn't know at the time, because when I saw him, I was like, you don't look like Jesus, but you feel like Jesus. And as he's approaching me, his eyes are amazing. Like, they have the universe inside them. And the way I saw them, they were blue, but I could see just everything over his eyes. They were the most magnificent eyes I've ever seen. And he had white robes, sandals. And then I recognized, like, and he had hair. It was kind of like lightish brown, like sandy blonde, something like that. And he wasn't too much taller than me. I don't know how tall I was or anything, but he was taller than me, but not by much. And I said, "You're Jesus." And he just smiled. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And then I looked down at him, and I can't remember if it was in his wrist or in his hands, because I looked once and I was like, "Oh, you really died for us. You did it." And I just kept staring at his eyes when I was talking to him, almost like, I'm not even able to look at your wounds. And I said, "Can I go back?" And he said, "That life is over." And I started crying, like, no, this can't be. And I can't accept this. And he told me, there are no tears in heaven. And he just said it matter of factly. And when he said that, it was like a wave came over me, and everything that I was feeling kind of dissipated and just gently went away. And then I noticed there was a sound, and it was just like a constant noise. And I was like, that's peace. And I was just like, wow, what is this place? And then I said, what about my husband? Because I just couldn't let it go. And he said, he'll be fine. He'll stay in that relationship, marry her, and cheat again. And I was like, oh, wow. So even if I would have gone back, it was over. And he knew that. And I said, okay. And then he said, we don't talk like this here. And then he said, in my mind, we talk like this. And I was like, you could hear, oh my God, you heard everything I said, how I was like, you don't look like Jesus. Oh my God. And I'm complete embarrassment. And so I just was like, stop, like, to myself, like, straighten up. And then he said, I need to show you something. And I was like, oh my God, I'm dead. Anything, because I don't want to go to hell, because I wasn't a churchgoer. I was a woman who was pretty selfish. I really was. And I know I had money and a husband, and I was controlling. So I was like, anything. So he turned this way, and there was a guide with him. Now, I don't really remember the guide at all. I just know the guide was there. And they started up something that was like reeling or making noise. And then there were numbers showing going backwards. And I was like, what is this? And then my eyes kind of connected to it. And it was almost as if the screen was what I was seeing. And it went from when I was a baby to my current state before I died. And I was like, oh, they're seeing my life review. This is great. Oh my God, Jesus can see everything right now. Like, I'm literally thinking this. And so I'm seeing everything play out. And I was like, I remember that. But then there were some times where I was able to separate from that life review and just talk to Jesus about it briefly. And things were sped up and like, don't remember it. And things were slowed down to where I was really concentrating on those moments. Now, I remember as a child, not in my current life, this was during the life review. I was a girl. I had to wear a bonnet. I had to wear a dress to school, and we wore pretty black shoes. And we had to sit on the grass under the tree because the boys were able to run around on the sidewalk and the girls had to sit pretty. And I didn't like that, I remember. And a boy approached me and all my friends were giggling, and I was like, I don't really want to talk to him. And he signaled for me to come over, and so I went up to him, and I just knew he was about to ask me out, and I didn't want to. And he's like, "Will you go out with me?" And I said, "No." Ew. And then I turned around to my friends, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And he felt horrible, and I felt bad, but I was like, "Whatever, you know." And then he walked away. But then instead of following me, I followed him
Yeah.
in his consciousness and his mind. And he was like, she rejected me and she doesn't like me and no one likes me. And he just went on this rant. And I was like, I didn't even mean for that to happen. And I'm also thinking, why am I following him? Why am I with him? And then he actually asked out another girl later on, and she rejected him too. And he thought of me. It's because of you. He literally said that. He was in the
Mm.
hallway of school and said, it's because of you and thinking of me. And I'm like, this is later. I'm not even there. And I don't know if he associated me with rejection or what happened, but I literally followed him in his life, and he had a lot of rejection. And I don't know if it's because of his negativity or he attracted it or what. But I do know that as an adult, he was looking at a desk, and I'm still with him. And I'm like, why am I seeing his life review? I don't understand. I'm still not understanding this.
Mm-hmm.
And he's reading a Bible, and he's reading word for word. I even see his finger going over the pages and everything. And he's like about forgiveness. And then he looked up, thought of me, and said, I forgive you. And all of a sudden I was back with Jesus. And I was like, what would have happened if he didn't forgive me? And he said, you'd have had a life together. And I was like, thank God he forgave me. But
Mm.
I am thankful for that. But that showed me how much forgiveness really means. It means like a let go. And it's extremely important. I also saw my friend. She had curly dark hair, and she and I were supposed to hang out, and I didn't get around to it because I had other things going on. I didn't mean to dismiss her or anything, but I saw her complaining about me to other people, and I'm like, why is she saying that? I didn't even mean that. But I saw her thoughts and feelings like as if I was her. And she was just complaining to me or about me to other people, and it didn't make me feel good at all. I was a little bit angry. But then I talked with her. I could actually see me because I'm her, and I'm seeing me talking to her about the situation. And then she was like, oh, no big deal. And she forgave me, and it was over with. And so I was like, oh, thank God. Like she cared enough about me, and the forgiveness was just easy. But I could see and hear everything she said. But obviously that life was over with, so it's not like I could go back and say, hey, I heard you say that. But at the end of all of it, Jesus asked me, what do you think of that life? And I just said, I could do better. I know I could do better, because I couldn't lie.
Mm-hmm.
But I said I had a good heart, but then I was like, that's not what is the truth. I could do better. So then he said, I need to show you something else. I was like, sure, because like I said, I was afraid of going to hell. So because I wasn't a follower of Jesus or anything in that life, and so I just wanted to avoid that, because I had heard if Jesus is real and you don't follow him, you go to hell. So I was so worried about it. Um, so we went to my right, and then all of a sudden he said, I need you to judge this life. He had me up to another life review, and I was like, sure. So I'm watching it, and it's another woman, and she's just living her life, and she meets a guy, and there's poverty involved and different things, but I'm pretty away from it. I'm not really feeling much with this life yet. I'm just totally observing it. And things are continuing, and as she's really feeling for this guy, I keep questioning, why are you with him? Why are you with him? And I'm just continually watching, but then he cheats on her, and it was like, oh, I felt for her so terribly, as if now it's starting to feel like, have you ever had a dream where you feel like it's so real, and
Oh
then you
yeah.
wake up and you're like, oh my God. Well, it was like that. Like, this was me, and I'm living as this other woman who I have
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with. And I'm watching it and I'm like, just leave the man. Oh, this is terrible. Oh, he cheated. Oh, like, and I'm just feeling it and everything. And I'm like, I understand why you're with him. You care about him. He has children with you. I get it. I just wish you could do better, you know? And then they separate me from that life. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad you guys did that, because I really thought that was me for a second. And I look at Jesus and he's just like plain faced and quiet. And I'm like, what's wrong? Um, and he said, well, what do you think of that life? And I said, well, I mean, I see why she went for him. She has children with him. And I mean, I understand because she had feelings for him, but to be honest, she was stupid. And he said, that's you. And I was like, oh, like it made me panic. It made me feel like he told me I'm going to hell. Like it was so bad. Like, what do you mean that's me? It can't be me. No, just no. Like, I was mortified. I was like, no, no, no. Because I knew exactly what he meant when he said that,
Mhm.
because it's like, that's what's coming. And I just knew it. And I didn't want anything to do with it at all. And he interrupted me. Hmm?
Oh, I was just gonna say, so you saw this lifetime as a different life than the one you just came from.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
was totally separated from it.
Okay.
Didn't know any of these people, didn't recognize anybody. Nothing looked familiar. Even the actions of the woman were not my actions. Like,
Gotcha.
I kept questioning her, why are you doing that? Like, stop, because sure, I wanted to chase my husband in my last life,
Hmm.
but to a point. I would have, at least in my head, I would have stopped it, you know? And I think it had to do with the fact that I was up in heaven, peaceful, clear-minded, not
Right.
in earth,
Right.
not in the middle of it.
It's very
So
different.
I
Yeah.
had it. Yes. So I had a very different perspective, separated from this woman, didn't know why she's chasing him or what's going on. Um, but he interrupted me, Jesus did, and said, you'll like the mother. And I was like, I will.
Is that a joke? I never.
Yeah, yeah. Is it a joke, or like, will I?
He
But
does have
sometimes
a sense of humor, doesn't he?
he
Yeah.
does. He does. And it was like he knew that the silence needed to be broken. Like, because people, the guides or people around me were just like, my God, with this girl. I'm very like, what do you mean? No. So, but in the middle of that, somebody came through, and it was some man. I don't know who he is at all. I don't know. He came through and walked past me, walked past Jesus, and as if nobody was there, like he was on a different dimension of his own.
Mm.
And something split open, and he walked right through it. And I was like, oh, he's going to heaven. There's trees and plants. I want to go there. And I remember saying that to Jesus, like, why can't I go there? It's there. Because I asked, where's heaven at? Because, like, I don't want this. I don't, what do you mean I have to go back? I didn't want any of it. But when that man walked past us, and I said, how come he gets to do that? Now the answer, I don't remember. I don't remember what Jesus said, but I have a feeling that he completed his life. He did what he needed to do, and he was able to do that.
Hmm.
And I was not. I did die young in my last life too, so I don't know if I was supposed to live longer.
Hmm.
I think I was supposed to get over that, the situation with the husband, divorce eventually, and learn to love myself.
Hmm.
Um, so anyway, Jesus said, "You'll like the mother," and I was like, "I will." And he said, "Do you want to see?" And I was like, "Yeah." So he approached me and went this way. And remember, I was looking for Earth the entire time. When I
Mm.
turn around, there it is. It was right behind me. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." I was so mad. But he's like, "Are you?" He turns to me and says, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Yes." And so we jump together and fly to Earth. And as we're approaching, it's Africa, and the sun is behind us. So I'm thinking, it's daylight. The sun must be behind us somewhere. Like, I'm trying to remember where am I at, because I want to know. I want to know how this whole thing works. So we're approaching Africa, and as we're flying in, it's so fast. And all of a sudden, I see a group of people dancing, and they're going like this, like in a circle or something. And I was like, "Are they conjuring?" And I stop over them, because I'm like, "Wait a minute, I'm with Jesus, and he's gonna stop and make them stop. But he didn't. He literally, he flew forward, and then he turned around noticing that I wasn't with him, and he went like this, and I was like, okay, but like, what's this about? So then I continue to fly with him. I'm like, whatever, if he doesn't care, I don't care. And so I remember seeing all the land and the trees and coming, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. And it was like the sun setting and it was just really cool because we went to the other side of the earth. So everything went dark. It was like everything so fast and so amazing. I actually flew over the wall of China just briefly. And I was like, how is that? Because I went from Africa through Asia, across the Pacific Ocean, over California, but I looked it up on the map, and it does go horizontal for the most part, but there's a tiny little bit of the wall, and that's where I passed.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's where it was. So when we reached the ocean, I really wanted to touch the water, but I didn't want to slow Jesus down. So I was like, I won't do that because I didn't want to get in trouble either. But he was ahead of me, and I was like, this is so amazing. This is the best part of the entire thing. And we come up to California, and it's just like Indiana is in seconds. It was like faster and faster and faster as we flew. And we stop in the middle of a road, and I'm like, where's the mother? It's middle of night. And it couldn't have been too late because she was doing dishes. And I don't know where my dad was because I didn't see him, but my sisters were up. So we get to the street outside the house, and I don't even know which house or what's going on. Why are we here? We're in the middle of the road. And it's a small town in Mishawaka, Indiana. It's 3rd Street. And it's near Mishawaka High School, actually. So he's a bit further away from me. I'd say 10 feet away. And he said, just approach. And I was like, oh. So I start moving toward the house because he looked at that house. And so I'm thinking, okay, it's that house. So I start approaching. Boom, I'm in the kitchen. And there's my mother. And I'm like, oh. So she's
Your
doing
mother
dishes.
in this lifetime? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yep, in this current life.
Okay.
And so she's doing dishes, and I'm like, oh, she's kind of stressed out. Like, I'm just observing her, and I'm like, she's got a good heart though. Like, and then all of a sudden I hear a bit of yelling, and I was like, what's that? And it's my sisters, and I got pushed out. So I went back to where Jesus was, and I was like, what just happened? I was observing the mother, and then I think yelling happened, and what's the fighting about? And it's almost like I forgot earth life. I don't know. And Jesus said that happens sometimes. And I was like, okay. And then I heard something coming up behind me, and I look, and it's a car. So I'm hearing the gravel, and I'm seeing the lights, and I was like, oh. So I get out of the way, and the car passes me and goes right through Jesus. And I'm like, why didn't you move? And what the heck is really going on here? So, because I thought maybe my mom didn't see me because her back was to me. She was doing dishes. She didn't have time to look and say, oh my God, a ghost or something. She didn't see me.
Right.
And so then I just like, wow, they really can't see us here. This is so weird. And then Jesus said, are you ready to go back? And I was like, yeah, thinking, okay, where are we flying? Like, let's do this. Instantaneously, we were back where we were. I didn't get to fly again. I was like, what? Like, I'm so upset. And then I still didn't want to do it. I was like, no.
So you didn't want to do what? You didn't want to do
live, come into this
come
life.
back.
Okay. I didn't want to do it. I was like, no. And I said, I just don't really want to. And I said, what about school? I don't want to do school again. I already graduated college. Now I know I graduated college in that life. I was successful. I didn't want to do it again. And he said, I'll make it easy for you. I said, and then I said, well, how long will it last? And he said, about 30 years. So as a 20-year-old adult remembering this stuff, I was like, oh my God, I die when I'm 30, I think. Like, I was freaking out about it.
Yeah.
But what happened when I turned 30 was Will and I broke up. The father of my children, the person I was seeing.
Was it okay? Was this the same soul from your last life?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No. I think he had some other kind of karma with me from a
Gotcha.
different lifetime
Hmm.
because he didn't look like my husband, didn't feel like my husband. And as I said, when I was watching that life, I didn't recognize a single person from it, which Jesus did tell me I would be going to a completely different family for whatever
Okay.
reason. So
Okay.
I don't know why.
Hmm.
Um, and he said, he raised his arm and he said, "You'll be born under the sign of Aries." So then I looked up and I was like, "Oh," because I could see the stars and
Yeah.
the light shined on me and I could feel the download. I know what my personality will be. It's just like the last one because I was Aries before. And I remembered it had to correlate with it because I remembered what Aries is like. And he also said you'll have a similar personality as before. And I was like, okay. And then he said technology will increase. And I was like, it will? And he said, yes. And he actually had a cell phone up there and he was scrolling on it. And I was like, whoa, that is cool because it wasn't there before. Like
That is
it wasn't,
so funny.
yeah. And it wasn't even a flip phone. It was like the one I'm using today. And I was like, wow, that's cool. And I'm still like, but I don't know because I still didn't want to do it. And he said, I need to warn you about something. I said, okay. And then he said, I need you to look over here. And so I'm looking, and all of a sudden, I'm in a green room with two girls on a bed and feeling really, really weird, like really bad. And I was like, I remember staring at the one girl and just like staring at her and studying her. And Jesus said, well, before he said anything, I said, what is wrong here? Because there was something very bad. I literally felt demons.
Mm.
And he said, drugs. I said, drugs. I know drugs. I won't take those. And then there were two girls in front of me. And I said, what's going on with these girls? And he said, one will betray you. And I said, is it this one? And I'm staring right at her. And he said, no, she really loves you. And I was like, you kind of got out of it. And I was like, how do I know these girls? How can I avoid this situation? Because I want nothing to do with it. And he said, you know them through a boyfriend. And I said, is he my husband? He said, no, he'll hurt you. But I saw an image of that boy going back like this toward the living room. So when it happened in real life, I was like, oh my God. It solidified my pre-birth experience because it was a deja vu, like an
Hmm.
actual deja vu. And same with the girls. What really happened in this life was we were smoking weed
Mm.
because the boyfriend and I was in that bedroom talking with them. And the one that she betrayed both me and my friend because she ended up with the boy and her husband. So it just wasn't good. So it was a betrayal. But the reason I felt that really weird, bad vibrational energy was because of the weed.
Mm.
But when it happened in real life, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most bizarre deja vu I've ever had. This is the green room, the girls on the bed, and Jesus right here. And he's right here. Wow. Like in my head, replaying all of it as if he was here. And I remember thinking, we're going to get betrayed or something. And then I remember asking, is he my husband? And like, I think Jesus said, not right now. Oh, maybe he is my husband. And so I just went on and on trying to make it work and it wasn't working. But that's my fault for not listening. And like, I mean, I remembered fully he said, no, he will hurt you. But I was like, but he means yes later, you know, but that didn't happen. But then there was another thing he needed to show me. He said, I need to show you something else. I said, okay. And so once again, I'm looking, there's a girl in front of me and a brick building, and we're smoking weed. And I'm like, what's up with the weed? Like, I don't do that. So this girl is talking to me, but I'm kind of like not really involved like I was.
Okay, let me ask you a question, if I can
Sure,
interrupt for a second. Okay,
sure.
so when you're seeing these memor memories, I guess, you're seeing this, I don't know if they're memories or if you're seeing a preview of your life, correct?
It's a preview.
It's a preview. So this is pre-birth.
Yep, yep.
in this lifetime. Okay. So as you're bringing these memories through, your mind is thinking, I don't smoke weed. Why am I seeing myself smoke weed? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
As you're remembering. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, because I'm watching this as myself
Right.
about to live this life, but I'm like, why is this person always smoking weed? That is nothing I do. I don't do
Okay.
that.
Okay.
So it's totally uncharacteristic of
So you're
myself.
thinking as you're viewing it, you're thinking that as you're viewing it from pre-birth, not as you're viewing it
Yes.
from this memory state. Okay.
Right, right. And
Gotcha.
so in real life, well, I'll say that in a second. So when I was with that girl, it showed a life going totally away from
Oh,
what I was supposed to do.
I
So
had
he
an
was warning
experience
me.
like that too. Okay. Go ahead. Yes, I get it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he was warning me, if you continue
Yes.
down this path, you'll have to redo this life. And I was like, ooh, I don't want to do that. You know that. That's what I said. So I said, you don't even need to worry. I'm not going to be smoking. It's fine. I told Jesus that. And of course, what did I do? So in real life, when it actually happened, we were outside of our apartment building and we're smoking. And all of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute. I remember Jesus talking to me. And he said, if I go down this path, I'm going to ruin my life and I'm going to have to do it again. I said, I got to go home. I'm sorry. I got to go home. Like I literally interrupted the situation and went home right
Wow.
like that because I remembered and I stopped
Wow. Yeah. That's
because
awesome.
I was not going to be dealing with that. No. So I was like, thank you for
We
warning me. You
didn't want to
showed
have to do
me.
it again.
No, I didn't. And Jesus knew I didn't. So he
Yeah.
showed me because
Right.
he knew I would remember. He knew I would remember.
Yeah.
And I was so thankful. Um, so then I also remember, just like he showed me, you'll be born under the sign of Aries. He's very matter of fact. He doesn't elaborate much. He says just a few words and is done, you know? So you know what he's saying.
Hmm.
Um, he showed me a globe, and this is right around when he was showing me the phone too. Um, he showed me a globe and he said, you see that light? Like on the globe, he showed lights on it. And I was like, yeah. And he said, those are souls, and people around the world will connect, and there will be a way for them to connect later. And he was talking about the internet. And I was like, wow, how's that? Okay. But he said, I'm one of them, one of the lights. And I was like, okay, so we're here to make the world brighten up because it's too dense, too dark. And I was like, okay, then. And then I was like, what if what if I don't do this? What if I just don't go? He said, you won't like it. And I was like, I'm not gonna ask. I don't know why I won't like it, but you saying I won't like it means I won't like it. So dang it all. Like I was so upset because I didn't want to go, but I was like, I'd rather go because I don't know what that means. I still don't know what that means. Um, and so I said, well, what will I look like? And so then there was a big, wonderful, beautiful vanity and a big mirror, and I was looking at myself, and I looked dead on at myself, and I was like, oh, I'm like the same kind of. But I could see it was like I was a hologram. Like myself was underneath, and then the image of the human was on top. So I could still see myself, but the image of the human was on top. And so I'm like observing, and I'm like, I wonder if people will recognize me. And then I turned my face and I was like, no, my nose is longer and my chin is longer too. And my face is a little different, but it's almost the same, especially in my eyes. And then I was like, well, there's always makeup and I'll grow my hair long. I literally said that and here it is. So um and I remember thinking, guys have it so much easier. I said that to myself. But he said, you'll forget everything. And I looked in that mirror and I said, remember, to myself, like kind of secretly,
Hmm.
without anyone looking, or maybe people did look, I don't know. But I
Hmm.
remember speaking that over myself. I said, remember, you've got to remember this, because I didn't want to fail.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then I briefly met my children, And for some reason, it was kind of weird. Like, I met Kirsten first. She's my firstborn. And she wasn't really that enthusiastic about coming. She's like, yeah, I understand the situation. You know, she was here to help me. And we were like, okay, we're agreed here. We don't really want to go to Earth, but we have to. And then my other two came and they were all excited. You're gonna be my mommy. You're gonna be my mommy. And they were like, and I was like, okay, what's happening? You know, like I just don't know these kids. And they were all excited. But there was something where if I got out of that relationship early, it would just be Kirsten. But in case I didn't, then they would come. So it was kind of like that. Well, obviously I have all three children. So um which I'm very happy, and I wouldn't go back in time. Like, even if I could tell myself everything, like, because as I was 20 years old, I remembered things and I was like, oh man, like it was settling, but I still wanted Will because I knew I was supposed to have a husband. So I was like
Mhm.
hung up on that. And I didn't want to be a single mother. I had also lost my dad when I was 22 years old. He died of a heart attack.
Mhm.
Um, which there's a story about that too. Understanding